Hi, welcome to my podcast, Talking Travel with Wendy. I travel the globe interviewing really cool people in small hospitality and tourism businesses. Join me each week as I discover and share something or someone new with you. You can find more at www.travelwithwendy.net. And remember, it's always an adventure when you travel with Wendy. So thank you so much for joining us here today on Talking Travel with Wendy. Thank you, Pam. Pam and I know each other from Elizabethtown College, where I went to school for a year, and we played soccer together, but Pam has been super busy since our days in Pennsylvania. So welcome, Pam.
Thank you, Wendy. It's so great to see you again.
So tell us a little bit about what you have been up to.
Oh boy. Since college, well, it's been 30 years since we have left, which is really hard to believe. But yeah, I'm still involved with sports, and I'm still an active athlete. So I've gone from playing basketball and running in college to paddle sports. And that's been pretty much my focus since 1992. And yeah, so it's literally taken me around the world. So what I found was a sport that could help me travel the world and see different cultures and meet different people. And I found that sport was just this amazing universal language. You didn't even have to speak the same language. All you had to do was just show somebody a paddle or show somebody a basketball.
So when did you start with canoeing and kayaking?
It was actually kind of weird. I've been working for the federal government for the last 30 years, but I used to play basketball at the recreational center at the Naval Hospital in Bethesda when I worked.
Oh yeah.
So I used to play basketball in the gym with guys and all the time. And I was just over at the bulletin board one day, and the recreational director came up to me, and I was looking at this ad to try out for the national team for the first U.S. women's swan boat team that was going to compete in the World Swan Boat Championships in Thailand. This is 1992, and it would be the first time.
What's a swan boat?
A swan boat is it's indigenous to Thailand. So it's an 45 to 50 foot long, all teak wood, 2,000 pound canoe that seats 20 paddlers and has a drummer or whistler in the front and a steersperson in the back. And they were having, the coach worked at the hospital as a researcher. And he was having tryouts just to put together this first ever U.S. women's national team to compete in the first ever World Swan Boat Championships to allow women. So it was 1992 was the year of the woman in Thailand. So I wasn't really into the women's stuff until this experience. It really opened my eyes about the inequities for women around the world. Anyway, so I made the team, and I went to Thailand, and it changed my life. It was life altering for me because I had never flown before either. And so that opened up all these doors for me for paddle sports.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay. So you were also in Forks Over Knives, and I know you're a vegan.
Yes. That's really funny. Yeah. I was, I actually met, it's been quite a bit of journey for, going from just eating standard American diet, the SAD diet, just to, yes, I'm vegan, but the journey was, I got really ill. My body just started to fall apart in 2007. And I was evolving with my diet ever since 2002. I was starting to eat cleaner, probably, right around 2002. I converted to what would probably be considered paleo right now. So it was eating really clean, because prior to that, I was just eating cereal 3 times a day. And lots of bread, lots of pasta. So starting to eat more whole, fresh foods, even if I was still eating meat during that time, that was a big transition for me, was to really clean up my diet.
Yeah.
So by 2006, I was probably what you would call now vegetarian. I was still probably eating probably a little bit of fish, but probably dairy was my biggest thing that was hardest to get rid of.
Yeah. I think that would be mine 2000, as well.
Yeah, but by 2000, I just crashed. But this is where health isn't just what you eat. It's your your body, it's your mind, it's your spirit.
Right.
So I just had sort of a complete, utter meltdown right before a competition, ironically. And I got sick for about 2 weeks, and I couldn't move, didn't get off the couch. I lost about 11 pounds in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I literally couldn't even walk to my front gate. So it was like, change doesn't happen until it's more painful not to change. So over that year prior, I had been researching a bit more about dairy and more whole foods, plant-based diet, eating more raw fruits and vegetables. And I got connected with someone that gave me a lot of guidance on eating lots of whole, fresh, ripe, raw fruits and vegetables. And what I found was the same formula for healing. So I needed to really heal my body from a lot of different things. But I actually found that same way of living and eating was a formula for high performance.
Oh.
So I had to take off a little bit from competition during this time because I was sick. But when I started to come back, I was like, I found this supercharged engine formula that I wasn't going to let go of.
Yeah.
So I've sort of evolved from that right now. So I'm not 100% raw anymore, but I was for a little while. But I've been 100% whole foods, plant-based since, and it's just been life-altering.
I was going to ask how that benefits being an athlete with having a diet like that, because you get such conflicting information out there about, oh no, you need more protein to have it as fuel, and it is really hard to go through all the information and find out what works.
Yeah, Forks Over Knives is actually a good website. They have a good documentary. But there's a lot of protein myths out there. And as an athlete, you need calories, and you need high nutrient value foods, and you need sufficient calories. And there's a ton of protein in plant products. So if you're getting sufficient calories from good, clean, high nutrient dense foods, you're going to get enough protein. And if you look at, if you talk to any some medical professionals, but Dr. Neil Barnard, not all medical professionals. Now, keep in mind that medical school, they don't have clinical nutrition.
Right.
So they're not getting clinical nutrition in medical school.
I know.
So when they're giving you nutrition advice,
why do we not teach that?
They're probably reading the same articles that you have access to. But if you talk to a Dr. Neil Barnard, or Dr. Michael Greger, or Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, they're in the Forks Over Knives documentary.
I think.
They. It's painfully scientifically clear that fresh foods, plants, plant foods, sweet potatoes, fruits and vegetables,
avocados,
and the quinoas of the world, and nuts and seeds, and plenty of water and fresh air and sunshine, and good relationships and all that good stuff. All that lends to good health, but eating sufficient calories. And a lot of times when people fail eating plant foods is they don't eat enough. So if people are used to eating, a bacon and egg sandwich for breakfast, that's probably a lot of calories. But if they say, okay, I'm not going to eat that for breakfast anymore, I'm going to eat a banana. Well, a banana is how many calories?
Yeah.
A medium-sized banana might be 100 calories or
80,
less.
Yeah.
Maybe at best.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna eat fruit for breakfast, you just need to eat a little bit more. But it's not hard. People say, well, that sounds so hard. I said, it's actually a lot harder being sick, and it's a lot harder being in the hospital. I find it really hard to even think about taking lots of medication to control things that I can control with diet and lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah. And I was a little resistant in the first few years of my journey. I was a little resistant to frozen fruits and vegetables, but then when I learned that they're actually picked when they're ripe, and then they're put in a bag, and then I might pay a little bit more, but it's like I'm probably getting a little better product.
Yeah. So Pam, you are a voice and an advocate for women in sports, and so I'd like to have you share with us a little bit about Women Can International.
Thank you. Well, the women's sort of awareness for me kind of started in 1992 when I went to Thailand for that first ever World Swan Boat Championships, where women were somehow recognized as human beings for the first time, and we had events. But it wasn't until 1999 I was doing sprint kayak at my canoe club, the Washington Canoe Club in Washington, D.C. And at my club, women paddled kayaks, but not canoes generally. And I didn't really know what the Olympic system was like. I just knew that women only paddled kayaks, and they allowed women to, they had a women's canoe race. And I just decided my partner, Kelly, and one other woman, the three of us paddled in a women's canoe event at a regatta in like June 1999. And so I hadn't really paddled in the boat before, but instead of sitting and paddling with a double blade, I was kneeling, paddling with a single blade, which was really hard. So you have to basically, the goal is stay up, go straight, finish. So that was my first race, but this is, you have sometimes these pivotal moments in life where you sort of find your purpose. Well, that's what kind of happened at this time, but it actually happened out of failure. So the gun goes off and I'm actually shootout ahead, and I'm in the lead going into the finish line by a lot. And there's actually a lot of people on the shore shouting and cheering. And I got a little nervous. I got a little psyched out from all the people cheering. And literally 3 meters from the finish line, I saw this gigantic orange buoy, and I kind of had a panic attack and freaked out, and I fell in. So I actually didn't even cross the finish line. And so you heard this collective moan from the shore, and it was like really, but it was like for the first time in my life, utter failure and embarrassment was, for whatever reason, it didn't feel like failure in that moment for the first time ever. And to me, I'd won the race because I was ahead, but I'd won because I had done something I didn't think I could do, but I also did something that people didn't think women could do. But I just felt like I belonged in that boat, even though I completely fell out of the boat before the finish line. And then I met this woman, Sheila Kuiper, who was a pioneer for women's canoe from Canada. She visited our club, and she was on a mission to get women's canoeing events into the Olympics. So that was my aha of, oh, wow, that now I understand why we don't paddle them, because women, they don't have events in the Olympics, and that trickles down to local levels.
Oh,
so
sure.
Athletes go where the opportunities are. There were no opportunities for women in this. So from that point on, I was committed to being a part of that mission to get women's canoe events into the Olympics.
Well, that's exciting. What was her role in Canada?
Canada was the first country in the world to allow women to have women-only events at their national championships in 1995. It actually took men in power and some women in power, but there's usually the men in power to say, okay, we need to give women these opportunities. So they opened the door. Sheila was, a million times national champion in Canada. But in 1998, remember, this is a time period where 10 years out from an Olympics for 2008, Toronto is bidding against Beijing for the 2008 Olympics. So Toronto was putting women's canoe events on their program if they would have won that bid. So Sheila was connected with a woman who was working on the Toronto bid committee. And so that was a part of the campaign. So I have this gigantic poster at home called Power and Grace for 2008. And it's an amazing picture of Sheila in her canoe. And that was just like, my go-to picture, from that point on.
Yeah, inspiration.
And, it was, so she was traveling the world promoting, but they were running up against a lot of patriarchy and misogyny, and it's a male-dominated sport. So that began the big trek for me, and she invited me to Mexico City in 2000 to be a part of a women's canoe camp. And that was when I heard that in the U.S., Canada was the only country in the world that allowed women to compete at nationals. So in the U.S., I learned in March of 2000 that USA Canoe Kayak was going to open up 3 men's events to women. at the U.S. Nationals that year. So they opened up 3 men's intermediate events. So they opened up 3 men's events, and I was the only woman to compete in the singles events. And I got my Canadian friend Heather McNee to paddle in this C2 double canoe 500-meter event with me, and we won the men's intermediate 500 event.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I have pictures of me of my bronze medal in the C1 1000 meters men's event, and Heather and I are atop the podium for the men's C2 500 intermediate.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, that was a breakthrough. But the U.S. in 2001, USA Canoe Kayak had to change. So they had to change their bylaws to actually allow women. They had to write the word women in there, that women were allowed to compete. So 2001, they changed the name for the men's events to open events and let women race in all of the men's events. And then in 2002, USA Canoe Kayak changed its bylaws again to have women's canoe events in all ages and categories for the first time ever. So
and
we were the second
that
country.
Was
2002.
Yeah.
So we finally had a league of our own in 2002.
Yeah.
So we were the second country behind Canada. Yeah, so it was exciting. So it was exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah. So you really, I mean, even from E-Town, you've been a part of a league of your own for many sports.
It's been, yeah, I mean, the club soccer team, it really didn't hit me what that club soccer team meant. This is how I'm connected with you, was in 1986. I was burned out from running cross country and track in high school, and I just wanted to do something different in the fall of my freshman year. And I played soccer when I was in Boys and Girls Club, but beyond that. And so I just signed up for the club soccer team, and I was a goalie. I was terrible, but I was on the first club soccer team, and I still have that picture. And it was just, I didn't really think as much of it at the time because I was really shy in college. But I look back on that, and it's just like, wow, it was actually, I mean, you need people.
When Tammy connected with us, I really did feel so nostalgic. Missy, I was just good friends with Missy, and she said, "You're gonna go play." Like, I didn't know I had a choice. Because she knew I had played. I had actually, I grew up in northern New York, near Canada, 20 minutes away.
Okay.
And I had played soccer since I was 8. And
wow.
And then when I finally went to a college that had a team, I was so excited to play. And of course, the fact that we played on a cow pasture and we're okay with it, and we just went out and had a good time. I don't think any of us knew at the time. We just were like, they started a girls team, let's play. But I was so thrilled and happy to know that the legacy and what is happening now at E-Town is just awesome. It was great.
Yeah, I think what's important, and people like Michelle and Tammy, they went basically door to door because they knew they needed numbers. They needed people to, I guess, sign a petition, I guess, but they needed women to show up. And it's exactly what we had to do with women's canoe. But we needed girls and women to show up. But we also needed organizations to provide the field of play.
Yeah.
So the school had to at least provide something, even if it was a cow pasture.
Yeah, I know.
Walls. That's usually what happens. See what they can do with the worst of conditions.
Right.
But you have to have those numbers in place in order to in order to provide that foundation for conversation, because people will always say, well, girls aren't interested. See, they didn't show up. You just need people to show up. So there's equality, and then there's equity, and then there's justice, I guess. But it's one thing to say, yay, we have a men's team, and yay, we have a women's team. But the women have the lowest budgets. They don't have the best equipment. They may not have full-time coaching. The coaches might get paid, $3 for every $100 that the men are paid. So there's equality, but there's not equity.
Right.
And, and that's still happening today. So we have to talk about it so people can be more aware. And it's the same thing that happened for women's canoe. It was one thing to have women's canoe events at the nationals or at the world championships or at a Pan American championships. But if one thing to have events, but if the girls and women didn't have access to the same environment for success as the men,
right,
you were never going to perform. But yet normally the critics were the people who were there at the performance stage to say, oh, they couldn't do X, Y, or Z. It's just like, well, you've got to look back to see what did they have to help them get there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of systemic barriers that are still in place.
Sure.
And too often it's for women and girls of color as well. And then and when the girls with disabilities or even athletes generally with disabilities. So we just have to be aware of these little barriers. Sometimes it's unconscious that we just don't recognize it. But the more we talk about it, I think the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So what new projects are you doing right now? What new projects are you doing?
Well, the women's canoe stuff, basically it put me in a position where I was both an athlete, but also kind of an activist too. So people accused me of just being self-serving. It's just like, well, I want to compete in events. So that kind of activism as an athlete, there's a different role that you take on. In 2014, I was invited to the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, Kentucky, to be a part of a panel on athletes for social change. So athletes who have leveraged their voice and platform as athletes in sports to talk about and speak about things that matter, justice issues. Being a part of that panel, I met a man named Sam Parfit. He became good friends with me. He was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was an athletic director at a private school in Chattanooga for at-risk kids. And he was teaching mindfulness to 8-year-olds.
Wow.
And so he was talking about mindfulness and access, like parkour for people with disabilities. And they had other women, a woman there talking about, access for at-risk kids. I was talking about social justice issues with equality. And so we all started to talk about how we've got we're physical performance issues. Now we've got mental health issues that we need to deal with, and well-being. How can we enhance the mental aspects of sport, but how can we also merge all of this into athletes have a platform? They're usually models in their schools, in their colleges, in their communities. How can we empower athletes to recognize that they have a voice? And to either just be an advocate for the little kids sitting by themselves getting bullied at the lunch table, all the way up to people that are, raising a fist on a podium.
Yeah.
So what that morphed to is Sam started that. It was the brainchild for the True Athlete Project, and that's the trueathleteproject.org. And it was a reimagining sport as just a training ground for a holistic approach to athlete development, but looking at sport as a platform for a more compassionate society, for social change. And we do that through nurturing the body, the mind, and the spirit, and nurturing our connection to other people and to nature and the environment, and our responsibilities in our communities, and leveraging sport to bring about social change.
So what is the vision that you see? Do you see this being nationwide?
So the True Athlete Project is based in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we have a global athlete mentoring program. So I'm the co-director for the global athlete mentoring program. So everything's virtual right now. Yeah. But we also have coaching education, and we have a lot of mindfulness training classes, but we have forged relationships with more UK sport organizations, and in Denmark. The other co-director for the mentoring program is Lawrence Holstead, and he is the program director for Danish fencing. So we have relationships right now with British fencing, UK sport. So we haven't yet branched out to U.S. organizations. So we spoke at the American Volleyball Coaches Association in December. So shout out to the AVCA for giving us that platform. So the goal is to forge more relationships, not just in the Olympic movement, but with club programs.
Sure.
To shift the mindset from, sport as an all about winning to sport as a training ground for developing whole people, human beings who are just performing an act of sport. And then using that to make people better, make the communities better, make society better.
Sure.
So we know that is not mutually exclusive to high performance. Right. So we see this, but we know that sport has so many positive things. It's been such a positive force in my life, but we've seen and heard too many stories where sport has had too many negative impacts, where coaches are, constantly yelling and being physically and, verbally abusive to athletes, or, we've now are reading more stories about sexual abuse of athletes in gymnastics and a lot of the Olympic sports, wrestling. So we're seeing the positive parts of sport, but we're realizing, and people are finally finding their voice to talk about the negative sides of sport. But we have an opportunity to change that dialogue. Coaches
Absolutely.
Don't have to be abusive to get people to realize their true potential. There's a different way. So that's why part of our coaching is not just to help athletes, to empower athletes, but to empower coaches for a different language and different skill set that can still achieve high performance, all while trying to preserve that human that you're trying to mold and shape.
Yeah.
You don't have to crush that human spirit, which some athletes, it's 40 years later, they're still realizing and feeling the impacts of things that happened to them when they were kids.
Sure.
We can do better. We can do better as sports generally.
Well, just interviewing at Jesse Owens and the impact his coaches had on his life, his middle school coach, and then his coach at Ohio State. And they just had, and it seemed as if both of them were absolutely concerned about his whole well-being. His middle school coach, because he was from a family of 10, was concerned about him not having enough calories and would supplement his food sources because he wasn't getting enough for the training that he thought he was capable of doing. So I totally agree that you have a mentor program and a mentee program.
Well, it's the Global Athlete Mentoring Program. So we get elite and Olympic level, Paralympic and Olympic athletes to be mentors. And then we have athletes ages 15 through 24 who are the mentees, and they sign up. Right now, sign up is open for our FY, I'm saying government term, but our 2021 program. So it's in a fiscal year.
Yeah, the weird
but
I knew what you were talking about.
Isn't that scary? Yeah. So people can sign up now to be either a mentee or a mentor in our athlete mentoring program. And you don't have to be in the Olympic track. So we're not wedded to that, but people who are looking at getting the most and being their utter best every day in the sports that they choose and leveraging those sport as that training ground for being better humans and making society a more compassionate place to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
With Sam, I started to recognize through my own mental health issues and my own sporting career that there should be no shame in talking about mental health issues or being open about empowering coaches and other people to let's address this. Let's be able to talk about it. And so all of this is now morphed into our curriculum, which has 5 pillars. It's performance. We talk about identity and values. We have mindfulness training. We talk about community and social responsibility, and nature and connectedness as all part of the well-being part of it. And it puts it all together. And it's not just like some people misinterpret what we're doing as kind of sports psychology. but it goes well beyond and deeper than just sports psychology. It's not just about positive thinking. It's
no, but like
deeper
you
than
said, mind, body, and soul. And I think when you have that balance, then you can have a pathway to excellence.
right. It's not mutually exclusive. And even at 52, I'm still an active athlete. I'm still competing. And yes, I try to eat really well, but I also make sure that I'm nurturing my soul, my spirit every day, that I'm surrounding myself with good, kind, compassionate people,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm continuously learning every day, that I'm practicing gratitude. Every time we have to wash our hands 8 million times a day, right? People say, I don't have time to meditate. If you're washing your hands for 20 seconds, and if you're not, shame on you. But if you're washing your hands for those 20 seconds, you can give yourself some gratitude. Like, I wish myself peace and safety and health.
Right.
And in that same 20 seconds, I can say, I wish Wendy peace and safety and calm and health. And in 20 seconds, you've washed your hands in due diligence, but you've also helped soften your soul a little bit,
Right.
and extended a message for someone into the universe. And that's just one little practice you can do every day, or just before you go to bed, or when you wake up in the morning.
Sure.
Like, I'm really grateful that I have a car that drives today, or I'm really grateful that I have, food that I can eat, or that I have clean water.
Yes.
Or that I can speak, or that I can move. And just taking a step back where it checks you, it brings you into the moment. And people say, well, what does that have to do with high performance? It has everything to do with nurturing your best human self. And the healthier and happier you are as a person, you bring that
Right.
to whatever you're doing in life, to your relationships, to your job, to your sport.
Yeah.
And I still feel like my best as an athlete is yet to come.
Yay. I'm excited to watch.
So in my sort of activism, with all my women's canoe stuff, I got connected with a lot of women's organizations, and I was really inspired by Nancy Hogshead Makar, who is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist, 1984 Olympics. And she started an organization called Champion Women, and she advocates for women empowerment, and she's a lawyer, and she's been fighting for justice and accountability in the Olympic movement. So there's actually a petition out now that I encourage people to sign on to, which is new legislation to get more accountability in the Olympic movement. And I encourage people to sign that petition. We'll provide a web link at the end. It's team integrity. It's helped pass Senate Bill 2330. It's called the Empowering Olympic and Amateur Athletes Act of 2019. Yes, it's USOPU.info, USOPU.info. When people go to that website, USOPU.info, it can bring some context to documentaries like Broken Trust, Ending Athlete Abuse. And people can watch that documentary at brokentrustfilm.com. And I also encourage people to watch the documentary called Athlete A, and that's specific to gymnastics. But that could give some context for what we're trying to fix in the Olympic movement, where athletes don't have a voice, and we're basically just cogs in the wheel, while administrators make lots of money and have lots of lucrative contracts, while essentially we have slave labor in our sporting movement. And we need to shift that paradigm where athletes have a voice at the table, and that the whole person can be brought to the table as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's just some big projects. So I was a big supporter of the Broken Trusts film and director Jill Yesko, and I had a little small cameo in that documentary. So I was grateful for that. I love learning from other people who are doing really amazing things, and I want to be like them. And so the more I connect myself with them, I want to support them. If I can support them financially, I will. But if I can lend my voice and lend any skills, I'm going to try to do it.
Yeah.
And in paddle sports right now, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not just gender issues, but we think about, how can we make sport more inclusive and inviting for everyone? And so you don't see a lot of Black and brown people in paddle sports. So that's an issue for me. And we want to get people that might be differently abled to get their wheelchair on a sup board, or to be able to have access to waterways.
Right.
So I'm part of a paddle.
But they need to have access
committee
for everything. The coaches and sporting facilities and equipment.
Correct.
And
everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We need to make sure everybody has the same environment for success and the same access to the same environment for success.
Yeah.
That's a tough row, to use a rowing term.
Yeah. What is the website for True Athlete again?
The True Athlete Project is the True Athlete Project, TheTrueAthleteProject. So thetrueathleteproject.org.
Okay.
Just like it's spelled.
Awesome.
For women's canoe stuff in the Olympics, we are womencanintl.com. So just women and then canintl.com. I have a Facebook page called Vote Yes for Women's Canoe that's exclusive for the Olympic women's canoe movement for both sprint and whitewater canoeing.
Thank you so much for joining me here today, Pam. And I look forward to catching up again in the future and seeing where everything and following and getting on the True Athlete Project. And thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Wendy.
I have much more content on my website, travelwithwendy.net. And you can also support this channel by becoming a Patreon patron. The links are below. Remember, it's always an adventure when you travel with Wendy.